Welcome back to this show with two ex-Sheffield Wednesday stars, two notable defenders on the Hillsborough scene, although Tommy Spurr, who's with us, was very noted for getting forward, particularly down the left-hand side. Jon Newsome is with us as well to talk about a breadth of football topics, but in particular about a special charity game in aid of the Spurr family, in aid of little Rio Spurr, that's taking place at the Doncaster Rovers ground this Sunday. I mentioned 3 p.m. as the kickoff time. Actually, Tommy, it's at 2 p.m. And I know that you've been through a lot of hoops organising this. It's not simple to put something like this together.
No, in fairness, this is probably the least least involvement we've had in the numerous fundraising events that we've managed to put on. It was actually Dion Burton, another former Sheffield Wednesday striker, who got in touch with me on Instagram and said, "Look, mate, it's horrendous what's happening to your son. Please, can I help organise something?" And I think he has some involvement with some of the celebrities that are coming and playing, and they've managed to get a good lineup. And asked me if I can get some of the lads that played in the title-winning season together, and luckily they've all agreed to play, and more than happy to come across, along with Dean Saunders, who was the manager for part of that season. And then again, Carlton Palmer agreeing to play, which is amazing. So it's a good lineup of sort of ex players and TV, music celebrities across the UK. So no, we're looking forward to it.
You've got some soap stars playing, I believe.
Yes, some soap stars from Hollyoaks, EastEnders, a couple of Love Island people, an X Factor winner, Sam Bailey, musician Tom Zanetti, The Only Way is Essex, Dan Osborne's coming up to play. So it's a good mix of people. And to be fair, I think some of these actually play more often than us nowadays, so they might actually be quite good.
Well, I'm sure it'll be fun. I'm sure there's no way that ex-footballers take anything purely for fun, though, do they? There's always a competitive streak.
Yeah, well, Rob Jones is playing, who are obviously at Sheffield Wednesday as well, and there's no way he's letting any celebrity get past him. He's not taking any prisoners. I know exactly what Rob's like, so no, he definitely won't. And I can't see Carlton Palmer letting anyone past him either, to be honest.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's all to be enjoyed. And I'm sure you've got a good crowd there. And tell me about the fundraiser. I mean, what sort of figures have you managed to raise so far? What has it enabled you to do Rio's condition that you couldn't have done?
Well, this is the kind of difficulty with Rio's condition. It's, even though Wilms tumour generally as a whole, when you look at it, say search it on the internet, there's about 80 kids a year get diagnosed with it. So it is rare in itself. And if you look at it on the internet, it's got a good prognosis. However, it doesn't tell you that. You don't actually find out how serious the cancer is until they removed Rio's kidney and the tumour. And the pathology of that tumour, when they cut it up and look at all the cells were basically high risk cancer cells within Rio's tumour, meaning he falls into an even smaller category of about 4 or 5% of those 80 children every year. So that means that Rio's cancer is a lot more resistant to chemotherapy, meaning it's harder to treat. Therefore, his chances of survival have dramatically dropped. And along with that, even if he does come through this first bit, he's 1 in 2 likely to relapse. And if that is the case, his chances fall to about 10% of surviving. So by raising this money, it gives us that opportunity that if that does happen, we're in a position to go to X, Y, and Z, to go for trials and like I said, give him that chance, because he deserves it. He's 3 years old. No one deserves to go through anything like he's gone through already.
Possibly to America.
You hear America people going, the most likely destination.
Okay, yeah. So it's all in an extremely extremely good cause, and we all, I'm sure, a lot of people praying for you and for your son. And Jon, as we discussed in part one, there is nothing more important in life, is there, than your kids.
No, absolutely not. Like we touched on it before, and it beggars belief. I have no concept of what Tommy and his family are going through, and other people. I remember Brian Gunn lost his young daughter just before I signed for Norwich City, and it's just something that you just cannot imagine going through. So yeah, just like everybody else, you just wish Tommy and Rio and his family all the very best, and you hope that he's the 4%, don't you? That's the thing, you know what I mean, or the 10%. We hear of these magical stories. I've got a friend of mine who you might know him, Alan, John Price, who played at our golf club and got diagnosed with cancer many years ago and went on a clinical trial, and I think he's the only survivor out of that clinical trial. But the important thing for Jon is he's the one, and let's have his fingers crossed that Rio's the one, and I think that's the only thing that probably drives you on and gets you through,
Absolutely. It does seem, pardon me, it does seem a little bit insensitive discussing football in the same program, or current football as the same program as something so serious. But Tommy, I think you quite enjoyed the, shall we say, the escapism of it in part one. I dare say you're not having many conversations about football at the moment.
No, it's taken over our lives, and it has to, because he's our priority, and we're just trying to do everything we can, just like I said, to give him a chance. That's all we want him. As long as he's got a chance, then there's hope. So we're hanging on to that.
There's a massive network of friends in football, referred to as the football family. But it actually, it's not a glib cliche. It's quite strong, isn't it? I mean, I always sense this at football gatherings, that you're sort of, at each other's throats, during your careers. But when I see ex-footballers and managers together, there's always a great spirit of camaraderie there, despite the intensity of that competition, which kind of surprises me. It's quite heartening, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about football. You might not see or speak to people for years, but then once you are in their company again, and you're not playing, it's a lot more relaxed, and people are a lot more themselves. There's no competition, there's no ego. It's just two lads that used to play with each other, and it's great.
Yeah, Jon, I mean, you could have been at daggers drawn, with opponents over the years. And out of that, sometimes there's a greater friendship and respect than there would have been had you been teammates.
Yeah, I mean, you've got that common ground, haven't you? I think that's the thing. It's that you all appreciate what it took to get there, and what you went through when you were there. And from the outside looking in, it looks like a rosy, fantastic career. And don't get me wrong, it is. It's for me, it was the best career in the world. But it's really tough to get there, and it's really tough. There's a lot of fallout, and to actually, I mean, like we alluded to in the first part, the standards and the way that they went around about it when we were younger, coming through as apprentices. It was a tough school, and so when you come through the other side, I think you have that common ground, and you do build those friendships. And I know it's a cliche that you've used already, the football family, but it really is that. It really is that. And you bump into people who, at times, you've never, I've never played against, but they know you as a player, and you know them as an ex-player, and all of a sudden there's a big handshake and a pat on the back, and you're swapping stories, and it really is a very, very close knit community.
Yeah, rivalries can be put to one side. Certainly in the case of Tommy at the moment. It strikes me. I was just looking at the time that you were at Hillsborough, and even on a Sheffield Wednesday show, we occasionally talk about Sheffield United, who are doing great, apart from the result the other night against Rotherham. Well done, Rotherham, by the way, for that remarkable victory at Bramall Lane. It just strikes me, Tommy, that you will have come across Paul Heckingbottom, because you were a kid, weren't you, coming through at Hillsborough when he was in the first team?
Yeah, he was the left back. I remember actually, I think he was coming back from injury and he played left back. I was centre half at that time in the academy, and he were always great with the younger lads. He was always one you could feel he could ask something to, whereas some pros obviously are a little bit more standoffish and don't really speak to him. But Eki was always one that kind of helped us as younger lads. So he was great with us.
Yeah, you referred earlier to Darren Moore being a good person, and I suppose if you work for an understanding boss, you're likely to give more than for somebody who's at you all the time. And it occurs to me that Paul Heckingbottom's of a similar ilk in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, unless he's dramatically changed as a person since then, but that's kind of the view you get from him from the outside. And I know Ollie McBurney a little bit, because he's from Leeds and went to the same school that I went to, and still goes up to watch his mates play cricket in the summer and things like that. So, and I think he thinks a lot of him because of the way he communicates and speaks. And like we said in the first part, a lot of it is about that. If you can communicate properly, lads appreciate how they've been spoken to and that you're trying to help rather than digging them out, which they don't react quite as well to, I don't think.
Yeah, it's a modern style of management that's got more chance of success, I think, than the old confrontational, in-your-face style, John. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, as we say, time moves on, doesn't it? And, back in my day, there was some man management, there was some communication, but there was a lot of bullying, a lot of shouting and bawling. And as Tommy said earlier, that doesn't necessarily get the best out of people. And I think the pendulum swung in football as well. Finances and players have a lot more power now because of the Bosman ruling, and they can dictate to the club what they want to do rather than, when I first got into football, you were dictated to by the football club, whether you got a contract or they could put you on the scrap heap and let you rot. And that's not, and that's really a form of bullying, isn't it? And that's sort of like gone out of the window a little bit now. And, with mental health and I think it's just a respect thing as well. And for me, the biggest thing about, I look back on my career, the best football I played was under the managers who I got on the best with and I probably communicated with, and the managers who made me feel that I was wanted at the football club and I was worthy, and not the ones that just wanted to shout and bawl at you and dig you out for the sake of digging you out, and I think people have learned over the years that that's probably a better way of achieving success.
Who were the ones you particularly feel that you responded to then?
I really enjoyed working under John Dean at Norwich City and Gary Megson, most definitely. Howard was difficult for me under Howard. I massively respect him, but I was a young lad coming through, and so that was difficult because I think sometimes you still, even though you may 23, 24 years of age, you're still sometimes viewed as still the young lad. So yeah, my time at Norwich was where I played my best football. Really, came back to Sheffield Wednesday under Davy Pleat. I was okay under Pleat. He wasn't a shouter and a baller, but so yeah, they were probably the ones for me.
Yeah, I mentioned Gary Megson there. I think, Tommy, you had a slightly different experience with Mego.
Yeah, we'll leave that one for today, shall we?
Yeah, okay. I've read about it. I mean, it's all to do with what he was looking for you to do as captain,
like
the way he wanted it to be.
It's one of them. It was, I think, at that time that's when the times had changed between the type of characters that were in football, and that just wasn't my sort of character, to pin people up against the wall and get them to do the jobs. And that my way was showing how hard I worked and kind of doing it that way rather than wanting to fight people, because lads wouldn't react well to that.
Also, you have to be naturally that sort of character, and
yeah, exactly.
Some people can be.
Yeah.
And you know, and some can't. Some people are very effective at it as well. You know, I'm thinking of Glenn Loovens as Sheffield Wednesday captain. I think he was a pretty formidable character, John, from everything that I was told about him. I think he wasn't averse sometimes to pinning a player up against the dressing room wall. I heard a story about Fernando Forestieri in that respect with Tommy Spurr. I don't know if you heard the same.
No, I've not heard that one.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you know, I know Glenn Loovens quite well. I've met him sort of like away from football. You couldn't meet a nicer guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I'll tell you something that certainly has changed, and that from both of your playing days, and that's playing out from the back, which, you know, you wouldn't have seen a lot of. Certainly not as much as today. Do you enjoy watching it? I mean, you first, Tommy. Is it a style? Everybody seems to be doing it. It's certainly exciting because it can go wrong, but it can also produce goals going the length of the field. Is it something that you would have relished as a player?
I think some Sheffield Wednesday fans might disagree, but I think as my career went on, I got more and more, particularly from when I went to Doncaster under Sean O'Driscoll, where I had to improve on the ball, because at that point Doncaster used to pass, and from then on, I really enjoyed playing out from back. Whereas at Sheffield Wednesday, I was used to giving it to my winger and staying, or just clipping it down the line, because that's how we played at that time. But as my career went on and football had changed, and playing out from the back, especially moving into centre half, like in my last couple of years of playing, I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant, because it took away just heading it and kicking it. You actually felt involved in the game, and you got touches of the ball rather than just with the middle of your forehead.
Yeah, I mentioning Sean O'Driscoll, something I cannot understand for the life of me, why he is not a manager in today's game with the record that he's had. I mean, surely he would be perfect, wouldn't he?
Yeah, well, he kind of started it in like the Championship and League One before everyone else has jumped on that bandwagon. I mean, if you remember Doncaster at that time, they just used to pass teams off the park, and yeah, all right, they didn't finish the league in the league table that high, but they were probably one of the best teams to watch during that period. And like I say, in this current era of football, I think Sean O'Driscoll would be excellent.
Oh, yeah, I remember Brian Stock and Richie Wellens controlling it from midfield. It was a wonderful team to watch. John, are you enjoying it? I mean, there must be times when you're thinking, for goodness sake, just get rid of it.
I don't know about that. I don't know about just get rid of it, but I don't have an issue with teams playing out from the back if you're doing it with a purpose. You know, I think that there's a difference between playing tippy-tappy football on the edge of your box and playing triangles and not going anywhere, and actually playing out from the back, wanting to move the opposition and create space and carve them open. And I think the problem you have with football a lot of the time is people want to try and reinvent the wheel. And the game's never been as much as more about success as it is today. You know, and you've only got to look, you know, we're in November, and how many managers have already been sacked because, you know, they're eighth in the table or the 14th, and they've lost the last 3 games. And so, yeah, it's a philosophy that I would have, you know, I think I would have enjoyed. But, I enjoy winning games of football as well. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, that, you know, you've got the best teams in the country, you know, your Man City, you will pass you off the park, but go and watch Liverpool, and Liverpool will play from back to front, and they'll, you know, especially before Mane left, you know, they'll Van Dijk will hit a 60-yard ball into the channel, and they'll spin you and run in behind you, and So I don't have an issue with it if you can do it at the right time, But I go and watch some academy games, and I hear some of these coaches on the touch lines, pass, get your passes in, and the centre halves are inside their own 6-yard box or inside their own 18-yard box, and get your passes in. And I'm thinking, well, where are you going? Where are you going with that? So yeah. I enjoy watching it. I think it's good for the game, but I think, as I said to you before, it's got to be done with a purpose, and it's got to be done with an end goal of trying to win games and open teams up and be creative, really.
Something else that's certainly changed is, or been introduced since both of your playing days, is squad rotation. And Tommy, I'll throw this one at you first of all. Darren Moore is a particular fan of it. It's ridiculous and stupid, really, to try and second guess his next lineup. Where would you stand on it? Do you think a manager should know his best team and put it out unless there are injuries to disrupt it? Or do you think that Darren, and in the end, results will decide, do you think he's right to adopt this philosophy?
I think if you're winning games and the same team is performing, then I think the team picks itself. However, I actually suffered with it a little bit towards the end of my career with Alex Neil. Like, it was the first time that I played really well and then got left out because of who we were playing the next week. I think we started the season, we kept 3 clean sheets playing at centre half. Then we were playing someone else who had 2 small, nippy, quick kids up front. And he changed the team, and I was gobsmacked because I kept 3 clean sheets. But I think a lot of it nowadays is who the opposition is and which players can hurt the opposition that you have at your disposal. And perhaps that's what Darren was kind of doing with the Sheffield Wednesday squad. And as well, we're playing a lot of games. It's intense. So I think that those factors have to be taken into consideration as well. Like we were speaking earlier about analysts and things. A lot of football now, when the lads have gone home, is the staff watching the opposition, and if they see that one of their lads might have a strength or a weakness against one of their own, then they perhaps will change the team based on what they've watched throughout the week.
Where do you stand on it, John? Certainly Darren Moore is keeping everybody involved. There's no player there among the seniors who will be thinking, well, I'm just not going to get in.
I think it's a useful tool, and I think it's understandable. But for me, again, it's what we touched on a little bit earlier. It's communication with the players, isn't it? And if you go into a team, if you sign for a club and you're told that, listen, you're not going to play every week, and that's not because you're not playing well or because you are playing well, but we're going to rotate the squad. We've got loads of games coming up. We want to be successful. We will change the team, and it's no slight on your performances. Then everybody understands, and it's about communicating.
Yeah, that's the key, though, isn't it, John? Like, a lot of managers don't speak to you like that.
Yeah.
Whereas, like the story about Alex Neil, he came up to me and said, "This is what's happening, and this is why." And as a player, you can kind of accept it more. Whereas if nothing gets said to you, that's when problems might start coming up further down the line.
Absolutely, and back in my day, it was, the communication between manager and player was virtually nil, really. With a lot of them, it was apart from shouting and bawling. I used to get. That's why I say it was difficult under Howard at times, because I used to play at Leeds, and sometimes I thought I've played really well this week. I've got to be in the side next week, and I'd be the one that got dropped. And I remember on occasions, Gordon Strachan coming up to me and actually putting his arm around me and saying, "I can't believe you're not playing this week." But as a young 21, 22-year-old, especially back in that day, you never went and knocked on the gaffer's door, or you just had to take it on the chin. Because if he pulled you in and said, "Look, I'm not playing you this week because they've got a flying left winger, and at 6'4", you're not going to be the best to deal with him at right back," or you get your head around it a little bit, and I think that's the thing, as Tommy's sort of like touched on, the analysis of the opponents. They have teams and teams of analysts now who go through everything. They go through the stats. They go through how the opposition play, and you've got to pick your team to either counteract that or run over the top of it. And I really just do think it's about player man management and communication, because if that fails, you're just left in the wilderness.
Well, that's all very interesting indeed. I suppose results in the end are paramount. That's proof of the pudding. If you get the results, it's squad rotation works. But it's fascinating to hear you both talking about football and the breadth of topics that we've covered here. But in particular, we wish Tommy, you and your family, and Rio in particular, good luck and fingers crossed, good health in the future. And may everybody who can get there go to Doncaster Rovers on Sunday for a 2:00 kickoff for a special game in aid of treating Rio Spurr. Very best of luck to you and your family, Tommy.
Thanks, Alex.
Fingers crossed for you. And thank you very much for the past hour or so. And I hope that in some way you found it a little bit of a release from the stress that you're undergoing. Many thanks to you, Tommy. To you as well, Jon. It's been a pleasure hosting you. We're going to take a break from this show during the World Cup, but I'll be back before Christmas in good time for that. Thank you ever so much for your company. See you soon. Bye-bye now.